Hey, motorcycle enthusiasts. I often get asked, can you synchronize a carburetor while it's removed from the bike? This, of course, only applies to multi-carb setups, and that's exactly what I'm going to show you today using a dual carburetor from a Suzuki GS 500. Before we dive into the practical part, let's go over some theory. Synchronization means that both sides of the carburetor operate identically. However, many people use synchronization to compensate for engine issues that aren't actually related to the carburetor. For example, if an intake or exhaust valve isn't sealing properly, or if the compression is uneven, the vacuum will also be different. This means that a perfect synchronization can only be done on a running engine. Today, we'll show you how to set up throttle valve synchronization as a baseline, making the final adjustment on the running engine easier and more precise. So stay tuned, watch the video until the end, and check the video description for all the important details. What we can do here, however, is set up mechanical throttle valve synchronization, making sure that both throttle valves are in the same position. This provides a solid baseline so that later when the engine is running, only minor adjustments will be needed. Ideally, this step should be done when checking and adjusting the valve clearance. Looking at the throttle valve mechanism, you can see that when we move the throttle linkage, the plates open and close. That's the key to everything. They must move exactly the same on both sides. One common method to check this is to place a small metal ball in each throttle opening and adjust them so that both balls drop at the same time. Personally, I don't like this method because it can be inaccurate. If the carburetor isn't positioned perfectly level, one ball might fall out slightly later than the other, even if the throttle valves are actually synchronized. I prefer a different method. I place a light behind the carburetor and look toward a bright background to check the light gap in the throttle openings. This allows you to immediately see if one side is more open than the other. In our case, one throttle valve is noticeably more open, which means synchronization is off. If you're doing this yourself, you should be able to observe the light gap on both sides simultaneously. On every multi-carb setup, there is a mechanical linkage between the throttle valves, usually an adjustment screw or a similar mechanism. This screw lets you fine-tune the throttle plate positions. If I turn this screw slightly, it changes the position of the throttle valve, and you can see the light gap on the left side becoming smaller. With a bit of patience and a keen eye, you'll be able to tell when both light gaps are perfectly even. During this process, you should open and close the throttle linkage multiple times and let it snap back to its resting position to ensure the mechanism settles properly. It can also help to slightly back off the idle adjustment screw to make sure nothing is binding. Unfortunately, it's difficult to capture this detail clearly on camera. Here you can still see a small light gap. And here you can also spot a tiny remaining light gap. Once everything is set correctly, you now have a mechanically synchronized throttle valve position, a perfect starting point for the fine-tuning on the running engine. For 4-carb setups, of course, you need to ensure that all 4 throttle valves are synchronized. The best part about this method? You don't need any special tools or additional equipment, just a light source, patience, and a good eye. And that's it. The baseline adjustment for the carburetor is complete, and it's now ready to be installed back on the motorcycle. In previous videos, we've shown you how to disassemble and reassemble different carburetors. If you haven't seen those videos yet, make sure to check them out. We also have other videos covering topics like carb rebuild kits and how to replace carburetor diaphragms. So don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and check the video description for all the important details.